The stars above Earth seemed endless, a vast expanse that stretched beyond imagination. But for the alien forces of the Xarnuk Empire, it wasn't the vastness that mattered. It was the tiny blue planet below them. Earth was just another speck in the universe, a simple, primitive world that was hardly worth their time. And yet, here they were. Inside the colossal alien ship, Commander Cathar, the towering officer of the Xarnuk Empire, stood on the bridge, staring out into the distance as his crew prepared to enter Earth's atmosphere. At over 9 feet tall, with skin like burnished metal and glowing eyes, he was a force to be reckoned with. His mind was sharp, his instincts honed over countless conquests across the galaxy. Earth was nothing more than a simple backward planet, he thought, barely able to defend itself from the advancing tides of space. He had dealt with far greater threats in the past. The Xarnuk Empire was known for its technological superiority and its ruthless conquests. With their fleet of massive warships and superior technology, they were nearly unbeatable. The ship's hull shimmered with the energy from its cloaking device, rendering it invisible to anyone below. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, the creaking sounds of the massive vessel echoed through the halls, its surface glowing with the heat of re-entry. But there was an eerie calm aboard the ship, a sense of anticipation hanging in the air. The crew, a group of highly trained soldiers and engineers, had been briefed on their mission. It was simple: invade, conquer, and subjugate. The humans wouldn't stand a chance. Cathar's fingers lightly brushed over the control panel as the ship began its descent. He wasn't concerned. The humans were insignificant in comparison to the power of the Xarnuk Empire. But something was different this time. The scanners picked up signals from the planet's surface, and Cathar's eyes narrowed as he watched. "We're getting some strange readings, Commander," the ship's communications officer, Viral, said, his voice tinged with confusion. The officer's skin was a dark shade of blue, his elongated features betraying his unease. Cathar glanced over at him. "What do you mean? The humans don't have anything that could pose a threat to us." "I don't know, sir," Viral replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "The readings are fluctuating. It's like some sort of interference, and there are energy pulses coming from the surface. They're unlike anything we've encountered before." Cathar felt a slight shift in the air, an unfamiliar twinge of doubt creeping into his mind. He quickly pushed it aside. The Xarnuk Empire was invincible. There was no force in the galaxy it could stand up to their might. Still, he couldn't ignore the strange energy readings. "Scan the planet's surface," he ordered, his voice stern. "I want to know what's causing this." As the ship continued its descent, the energy pulses grew stronger. Cathar felt a strange unease, a sensation that something was amiss. The ship's systems began to glitch, flickering between normal operation and total chaos. A low hum echoed through the vessel as strange symbols began to flash across the main control panel. "Something's wrong," Cathar muttered under his breath. "Why are we losing control?" Viral's hands flew over the controls, trying to stabilize the ship. "It's not us, Commander. Something on the planet's surface is interfering with our systems. We're losing altitude. We need to pull up." But it was too late. The ship was already too close to the ground. The alien warship, designed to hover with precision, was now plummeting uncontrollably toward Earth's surface. "Hold on." Cathar barked as he gripped the edge of his seat. The ship's engines roared as they attempted to correct their descent, but it was no use. The interference was too powerful. With a violent crash, the warship slammed into the dense forest below, the massive hull tearing through trees as it slid to a halt. The ship's engines sputtered, the lights flickered, and for a moment there was complete silence. Cathar stood up, brushing off the dirt and debris that had settled on him. His gaze flicked to the outside, where the wreckage of the Xarnuk warship lay partially buried in the earth. "Report," Cathar commanded. The crew scrambled to regain control of the situation. "The ship's integrity is compromised, Commander," Viral reported. "We've sustained severe damage." Power levels are at 15%. We'll need to make repairs, or we won't be able to get back into the sky. Thar's mind raced. The plan had been simple. Land, eliminate any resistance, and begin the occupation. But now they were stranded, vulnerable. Something on Earth was preventing them from completing their mission. This couldn't have been a coincidence. But what could it be? The crew scrambled to assess the damage, and Kithar quickly made a decision. We can't sit here and wait for help. Send out a team to scout the area. We need to understand what just happened. As the crew readied themselves, Kithar turned to his most trusted soldier, Captain Skar, a fierce warrior known for his strength and combat prowess. Lead the team. I want answers. Find whatever caused this interference. Skar saluted, his long, spindly arms flexing as he prepared to leave the ship. Understood, Commander. Outside, the dense forest surrounding them seemed eerily still. The strange energy pulses continued to disrupt their systems, and the landscape around them was uncomfortably quiet. The air was thick with anticipation. Thar's soldiers moved out, their heavy armor and advanced weapons glowing in the dim light of Earth's atmosphere. They had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows, a human resistance group was observing. Led by Captain Ryan, a human soldier with a strong sense of duty, the resistance had been watching the alien ship's descent. They knew the invaders would be coming, but they hadn't anticipated this kind of response from Earth. The pulse energy they had been using had been designed to disrupt advanced alien technology, but had it worked too well? Ryan signaled his team to hold their positions. They knew they couldn't engage the aliens head-on. Not yet. But this was the perfect moment to strike. With the aliens distracted by their damaged ship, now was the time for humanity to make its stand. The humans had been preparing for this day for years. Earth had been mocked and underestimated by the galactic empires for centuries. Now the invaders would see the true strength of humanity. The tiny, fragile creatures were about to show their true power. The forest was unnervingly quiet as the alien soldiers, fully armored and armed with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, began their march through the dense woods. They expected the mission to be a simple one, a quick sweep of the area, followed by a strategic takedown of any resistance they encountered. After all, this was Earth, a planet deemed primitive by galactic standards. The Karnak Empire had faced far more dangerous foes in the past, and the human race had been nothing more than a curiosity, a weak species that would quickly fall before their superior technology. As Kithar and his soldiers moved deeper into the forest, the trees towered over them like giants, their twisted branches casting eerie shadows on the ground. The air smelled of earth and wet leaves, but there was an unsettling stillness in the atmosphere, a silence that made the alien warriors uneasy. They continued on, unaware of the humans who were already preparing for their ambush. The humans had been waiting for this moment. Years of preparation, hidden beneath the surface of Earth, had led to this. With their advanced cloaking technology and plasma rifles, they were ready to face their invaders head-on. They had learned to hide in plain sight, using their surroundings to their advantage, their cloaking technology rendering them invisible to the alien scanners. As the Karnak soldiers moved into position, human snipers, hidden from view, almost like ghosts, raised their rifles. The tension was palpable. Then, without warning, a series of bright blue flashes erupted from the underbrush as the human soldiers opened fire with their high-tech plasma rifles. The alien soldiers were thrown off guard as the energy blasts hit their armor and equipment, disabling them almost instantly. Kthar barked orders to his soldiers as they scrambled to respond, but the humans were quick, efficient, and relentless. They struck with precision, targeting the weak points in the aliens' armor and disabling their weapons. The forest became a chaotic battlefield, plasma bolts flashing through the trees, sizzling in the air, while the aliens fought to regain their footing. Kithar's team struggled to make sense of what was happening. These humans, they were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures, hardly capable of surviving in the harsh conditions of space. But here they were, fighting with an intensity that was unheard of. The aliens' superior weapons were no match for the speed, strategy, and relentless nature of the humans. Every time they thought they had gained the upper hand, another ambush would erupt, and they would be forced back again. The human soldiers moved like shadows, their cloaking devices making it almost impossible for the aliens to track them. They struck quickly and then disappeared back into the woods, like ghosts in the night. Cathar was growing frustrated. This wasn't supposed to be happening. They were invincible. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. But the humans were outwitting them at every turn. Then the situation took a turn for the worse. Bonner, one of the Sarnak soldiers, was hit by a high-powered sniper shot that sent him tumbling to the ground. His screams echoed through the forest as he clutched his chest, the blood oozing from the wound. The other soldiers turned to help, but Bonner was already fading. Cathar rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. "Bonner," Cathar shouted, his voice full of urgency. "Stay with me, soldier." But it was too late. Bonner's body was still, his breathing labored. Cathar could feel the weight of the loss, the first casualty of the invasion. For a brief moment, he just stared at his fallen comrade. Then his eyes hardened, a fire burning in his gaze. This is no longer just a conquest, Cathar thought. These humans, they're not just survivors. They're fighters. Cathar's mind raced. He had underestimated them. These humans were not the fragile, weak creatures they had been made out to be. They were a threat, one that could no longer be ignored. He had to adapt. He had to change his strategy, or more of his soldiers would fall. But as the battle continued around him, something caught his attention. One of the human soldiers, a young man, darted forward with incredible speed and agility. As Cathar watched, the human leaped into the air, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire from the aliens. Then, in a split second, the soldier reached Bonner's side, and without hesitation, threw his body over the fallen alien to shield it from further fire. Cathar blinked in confusion. The human soldier had risked his life to protect a fallen enemy. But why? Why would they help one another in such a dangerous situation? Cathar had never seen this kind of selflessness before, not among his own soldiers, and certainly not among an enemy. It was a foreign concept to him, one he couldn't quite grasp. The human soldier, now exposed to the Sarnak's fire, held his ground with remarkable courage. He fought with the same precision as the rest of his team, but there was something different about him. There was a sense of urgency, a determination in his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for something more. As the soldier continued to defend Bonner's body, Cathar felt a strange mixture of admiration and confusion. These humans were not what he had expected. They were more than just weaklings trying to survive. They were resourceful, strategic, and above all, they were fierce. But the questions continued to pile up in his mind. Why had the human risked his life for Bonner? Why would they help their enemies? And most importantly, why were they so dangerous? Cathar's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp, sizzling sound as a plasma bolt narrowly missed his head. He quickly turned to find his soldiers fighting on, but his mind was elsewhere, lost in the strange dilemma that the humans had presented. These creatures, these tiny creatures, had no business being this dangerous. They had no business being able to challenge the mighty Sarnak Empire. Yet here they were, with their advanced tactics and unpredictable strategies, tearing apart Cathar's forces, one soldier at a time. The battle raged on, but the humans had already made their point. They weren't just going to roll over and die. They were going to fight back, and they would not be easy to defeat. Cathar stood tall, looking around at the chaos unfolding before him. The tide of battle had shifted. He had to rethink everything. If the humans could fight like this, it meant that they had something more, something he hadn't anticipated. And that thought terrified him. The forest was now a chaotic battleground. The air was thick with the smell of burning plasma, and the crackle of energy blasts. The Karnak Empire soldiers, once confident in their superior technology, were now struggling to adapt. Their advanced weaponry had been rendered useless by the humans' guerrilla tactics, and the forest had become an unpredictable war zone. With their cloaking devices, EMP pulses, and AI-guided weapons, the humans were able to keep the aliens on their toes at all times. The alien forces had been forced into close-quarters combat, a form of fighting they had never anticipated. Kar, towering at over 9 feet tall and heavily armored, had always prided himself on his physical strength and technological advantage. But now he found himself struggling to keep up with the nimble human soldiers who were using their surroundings with incredible speed and precision. Every tree, every rock, and every shadow became a weapon in the hands of the humans. The aliens' rigid, bulky armor was no match for the fluid, calculated movements of the humans. They were everywhere, attacking from every direction, never staying in one place long enough for the Karnak soldiers to retaliate. Kar's team was falling apart. They were trained for space battles, for taking down entire fleets of ships in an instant. But this was something entirely different. The humans didn't fight with brute force. They fought with strategy, guile, and an understanding of the terrain that the Karnak could never match. The alien soldiers were disoriented, constantly adjusting to new tactics that seemed to change on the fly. But Kethar wasn't one to give up easily. He was the leader, and it was his duty to lead his forces to victory, no matter the cost. He had fought battles on dozens of planets, taken down empires with his bare hands. But this was something new. The humans were nothing like he had ever encountered. As the battle raged on, Kethar found himself face to face with the human who seemed to be at the center of the resistance, a man named Captain Ryan. Ryan was small compared to Kethar, barely half his size, but there was something about the human that made Kethar hesitate. The man's eyes were filled with determination, and there was a quiet strength in his movements. Ryan had been leading the ambush, organizing the human resistance with remarkable efficiency. His tactics were brilliant, his strategies flawless. Kethar charged at Ryan, swinging his massive energy blade with all his strength. But Ryan was ready. With a swift roll, he avoided the blow, moving as if the forest itself was his ally. His plasma rifle fired at Kethar's exposed side, but the alien leader quickly blocked it with his armor. Kethar swung again, but Ryan was already on the move, using the environment to his advantage. A tree branch crashed down in Kethar's face, but he shook it off, anger rising in him. Ryan didn't relent. He moved like a ghost, darting between trees, never staying in one place too long. Kethar's frustration grew. He swung wildly, trying to corner the human, but Ryan was always one step ahead. The fight was fast-paced, intense, and it felt like it could go on forever. Ryan's voice broke through the sounds of the battle. It's not the size of the body. It's the size of the will. Kethar froze for a moment, the words striking him harder than any blow. He had heard the phrase before, but it never meant anything to him until now. His confidence wavered as the human's words sank in. What did it mean? How could this tiny human, this fragile creature, speak with such certainty? The battle seemed to slow as Kethar's mind raced. Was it possible? Could it really be true? As Kethar tried to recover, Ryan pressed the attack. The human soldier was relentless, using his environment to disorient Kethar. He ducked behind trees, climbed over rocks, and used every inch of the forest to evade Kethar's blows. The alien leader's massive form was too slow to keep up with the human's agility. Ryan's plasma rifle fired again, hitting Kethar's shoulder and causing sparks to fly from his armor. It wasn't enough to injure him, but it made him pause. Ryan didn't hesitate. He took advantage of the moment and moved in for another strike, this time using a knife to cut through a weak point in Kethar's armor. The blade scraped across the alien's thick plating, but it didn't penetrate deep enough to do significant damage. Still, the feeling of being wounded, even slightly, was a blow to Kethar's pride. The alien commander roared in anger, pushing Ryan back with a fierce swipe. He had to end this fight, and quickly. As he lunged toward Ryan, he heard a hum in the air, a faint sound that grew louder by the second. His weapons began to malfunction, sparks flying from the energy blade as it fizzled out of existence. He tried to draw his plasma pistol, but that too was dead. The EMP pulse had hit. Cathar cursed under his breath, his body tense with frustration. He knew exactly what had happened. The humans had prepared for his every move. They had anticipated the use of his advanced weaponry. And now he was just as vulnerable as any of his soldiers. "I knew you would come for me." Ryan's voice echoed through the trees. He didn't sound arrogant. He sounded calm, composed, even respectful. "It's not about size. It's about survival. And we survive better than you ever will." Thar's heart pounded in his chest, the words rattling his confidence. For the first time since the battle had begun, he was unsure of himself. These humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting because they believed. They had something that the Karnak had never understood. It wasn't about weapons, technology, or strength. It was about willpower, about pushing forward despite the odds, about refusing to give up. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, and he was shaken. He had undervalued the humans. He had assumed they were weak, that they could be easily defeated. But he was wrong. They were dangerous because they had something far more powerful than technology or sheer force. They had the strength to fight back, no matter how impossible it seemed. Cathar took a step back, his mind reeling. As he watched Ryan prepare for another attack, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for the human soldier. This was a fight unlike any he had ever experienced. It was a battle of wits as much as it was a battle of strength. And in that moment, Cathar knew that this war was far from over. The humans had only just begun to show him what they were capable of. Cathar's mind was in chaos as he sat in the prison cell aboard the human base. His once proud stance, so unyielding in the face of enemies, now seemed lost in the cold, steel walls surrounding him. The Xarnuk Empire had never known defeat. Not like this. Cathar had faced countless enemies across the stars, but none had ever challenged him like the humans had. And now, here he was, a prisoner, his fate in the hands of the very species he had once thought of as weak and insignificant. The door to his cell opened, and a human soldier entered, followed by a man dressed in military command attire. This was the human commander, the one who had led the resistance, and who now stood before Cathar. The man's name was General Harris, and his presence radiated confidence and authority. His eyes were sharp, his posture strong. He was everything Cathar had expected from a leader, but there was something else, something Cathar could not place. The human commander looked at Cathar, his expression stoic. "You have a chance to speak." He motioned for Cathar to stand, though the alien was chained to the ground. The guards had ensured that Cathar would not be able to escape, but they had allowed him the dignity of speech. Cathar looked up at General Harris. Hatred burned in his chest, but beneath that, there was a deep confusion. Why were the humans giving him this opportunity? Why not simply execute him, as was customary for prisoners of war? He had caused them suffering, brought destruction upon their world. Yet here they were, offering him a chance to speak. "Why do you give me this chance?" Cathar asked, his voice low and filled with distrust. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." The human commander met his gaze, unfazed. "We don't kill prisoners without a reason. We're not like your people, Cathar. We fight for survival, not for glory." Harris' words carried weight, and Cathar found himself momentarily taken aback. Humans, they valued life. As Cathar listened, Harris spoke of humanity's struggles, the many battles they had fought, and the countless losses they had suffered. But what shocked Cathar the most was the way the humans never gave up. He had heard stories of humanity's past, of wars, of destruction, of impossible odds. But it was only now, hearing it from the mouth of a human, that he began to understand the true resilience of this species. "We've faced extinction before," Harris continued, his voice now softer, though still strong. "We've fought wars that seemed unwinnable. We've lost friends, family, and entire cities. But we never stop. We never surrender." Cathar felt a strange weight settle on his chest. These words, though simple, struck him harder than any weapon. Humanity had faced so much pain, yet they never allowed themselves to be broken. They had something that the Sarnuk Empire could never understand. A unity forged through shared suffering and perseverance. A deep, unsettling realization crept into Cathar's mind. Could it be true? Could a species as small and fragile as humans truly possess such incredible strength? Just as the thoughts began to swirl in Cathar's mind, a sudden alert interrupted their conversation. One of the human soldiers burst into the room, his face pale with fear. "Sir, we've just discovered something in orbit." The soldier's voice was urgent. "There's a massive alien ship hidden in the upper atmosphere, and it's preparing for an attack. They're planning to destroy Earth, starting with the major cities." Cathar's heart sank as he heard the news. This was the moment he had feared. The Sarnuk Empire, his own people, were going to annihilate this fragile world. He knew what the aliens were capable of. The firepower of their warships was devastating. They would burn the planet to a cinder if given the chance. But even as Cathar's loyalty to the Empire warred with the growing respect he had for humanity, a decision had to be made. The human commander turned to Cathar, his eyes now hard with determination. "You have a choice now, Cathar," Harris said, his voice commanding. "You can help us stop the Empire, or you can watch Earth burn. The choice is yours." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and Cathar felt his mind spinning. He had spent his entire life serving the Tarnuk Empire, a mighty empire that ruled the galaxy. His loyalty to his people, his culture, had been unshakable. But now, in this moment, that loyalty was being tested like never before. The Empire had brought him here, to this world, to conquer it and destroy it. But humanity had shown him something that Karnak never could: the will to survive, to fight, to protect what they loved. Cathar's hands clenched into fists, his mind racing. He could feel the tug of war inside him. To betray his people, to betray everything he had ever believed in, was unthinkable. But watching Earth, a world so full of life and promise, be obliterated by the very forces he had once called his own was an unbearable thought. The suspense in the room was palpable as the human forces prepared for the inevitable. Time was running out. The alien warships were already in position, their weapons primed. The orbital bombardment was about to begin, and Cathar knew the destruction would be swift. Suddenly, a loud, ominous sound filled the air. The alien warships were launching their attack. Energy beams erupted from the ships, cutting through the sky and tearing into Earth's surface. Cities exploded in brilliant flashes of light, and Cathar could feel the shockwaves even from the human base. The war had begun. Cathar's heart raced as he stood in the middle of the room, torn between two worlds. He had always believed in the Sarnuk Empire, in their power, their superiority. But now, the reality of what was happening, of the destruction being rained down on this world, forced him to confront a terrible truth. The Empire, the very force he had served, was no different from the monsters they claimed to be. As the orbital bombardment continued, Cathar felt a surge of rage, but it was not aimed at humanity anymore. It was aimed at the Karnak, their cruelty, their disregard for life. In that moment, something inside him snapped. His loyalty to his people began to wither away, replaced by something stronger. He had seen humanity's strength, their resilience, and now he knew what he had to do. "I will help you," Cathar said, his voice firm. It was a declaration of defiance, of a man who had chosen to take a stand. He would fight for Earth, for the humans who had shown him what true strength meant. He would make things right. The air was thick with tension as Cathar, now fully aligned with the humans, led the charge toward the heart of the enemy stronghold. He could feel the heat of the battle rising around him as his footsteps echoed through the narrow corridors of the alien warship. It was a grim mission, and the odds were overwhelmingly stacked against them. The humans were vastly outnumbered, with only a handful of soldiers against an army of alien warriors who had long been accustomed to victory. Cathar had seen their technology, their advanced tactics, and their ruthless efficiency. He knew this would be a fight to the death. Despite the overwhelming odds, the humans were determined. They were fighting not just for survival, but for something greater, for their future, their families, their world. The bond between them was unshakable, and Cathar had come to understand that this was not something easily broken. The heart of their strength was not in their weapons or their technology, but in the will to survive, the refusal to be defeated. As Cathar and his team moved through the ship, they encountered fierce resistance. Alien soldiers, fully armored and armed to the teeth, came at them in waves, each one more brutal than the last. The humans fought back with a fury that Cathar had not anticipated. They used their advanced cloaking technology to stay hidden in the shadows, striking quickly and efficiently. Each move was calculated, each action precise. Cathar couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for the soldiers who, despite their smaller size, fought like giants. The battle was intense. Gunfire echoed off the metal walls, and the hum of plasma rifles filled the air. Humans darted in and out of cover, firing their weapons with pinpoint accuracy. Cathar fought alongside them, using his own strength and combat skills to take down alien soldiers. His massive frame and advanced technology made him a formidable force, but even with his advantage, he could see that the humans were doing something he hadn't seen before. They were fighting smart. They used every environment to their advantage, every corner, every shadow, every surface, to turn the battle in their favor. The aliens, more accustomed to brute force, struggled to adapt. But despite their incredible tactics and advanced tech, the human team was falling one by one. The numbers of the alien soldiers were simply too great. Cathar could see the casualties mounting, the fallen soldiers lying motionless on the cold metal floor, their faces contorted in pain. Bonner, one of the soldiers who had fought with him in the earlier battles, had already died, his body now a painful reminder of what they were fighting for. The memory of his death still haunted Cathar. Bonner's bravery, his willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good, was something Cathar would never forget. In the chaos of the battle, Cathar realized the true depth of the humans' courage. They were not strong in the traditional sense. No, they were small, fragile in comparison to the alien forces they fought, but what they lacked in size, they more than made up for in spirit. He watched as soldiers fell, only to rise again, driven by a relentless need to push forward. Each one knew the risks, but none hesitated. None faltered. As Cathar fought on, he found himself filled with a new respect for the humans. He had come to understand that their strength was not in their physical power, but in their unwavering resolve, their willingness to stand up and keep fighting no matter the cost. These humans, who were supposed to be weak and insignificant, were, in fact, some of the fiercest warriors he had ever encountered. But the tide of the battle was turning against them. The alien forces were starting to overwhelm them, pushing the humans back, cornering them with no place to retreat. Cathar's heart pounded in his chest as he fought desperately to keep the aliens at bay. But he knew that this was it. They had given everything. In that moment of despair, Cathar had a realization. The only way to give the humans a chance to escape, to win, was to sacrifice himself. He had to make sure the humans could get away, even if it meant his own death. Cathar made his way to the alien warship's power core, the heart of the ship's energy. He knew that if he could sabotage it, he could disable the entire ship, giving the humans enough time to escape. The power core was heavily guarded, but Cathar didn't hesitate. With a fierce roar, he charged toward it, cutting through the alien soldiers in his path. His plasma sword slashed through armor like butter, his massive frame crushing everything in its way. But despite the chaos, he could feel his time running out. As he reached the core, he knew what had to be done. With a swift motion, he planted an EMP charge at the base of the power core. It would disable the ship's systems, causing it to implode within minutes. Thar knew he wouldn't make it out in time, but that was the price he had to pay. He had already given everything for the humans, and now it was time to make the ultimate sacrifice. With the EMP charge in place, Kithar turned to face the remaining alien soldiers who were rushing toward him. Their weapons were trained on him, but he didn't flinch. He had made his choice. The humans had to survive. Just as the alien soldiers prepared to fire, Kithar activated the EMP charge. A blinding flash of light filled the room, followed by a deafening explosion. The warship's power systems collapsed, and the ship itself began to break apart. The alien forces were thrown into chaos as their technology failed, and the humans seized the opportunity to launch a final counterattack. The blast from the EMP had given them just enough time to break through the enemy lines and escape. As the ship began to break apart around him, Thar stood tall, a sense of peace settling over him. He had done his part. He had fought for the humans, and now they had a chance to survive. Even as the walls around him crumbled, he felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that his final actions would allow the humans to carry on the fight, to continue living, to keep defending their world. Kthar's final thought as the explosion consumed him was simple. The humans were not small. They were massive. Massive in their hearts, their courage, their spirit, and they would win. The battle was finally over. The last of the alien warships had crumbled into nothingness, its wreckage floating lifeless in space. The skies, once filled with the ominous presence of the alien fleet, were now clear. The humans had done it. They had overcome the Tarnuk Empire and secured victory, but the cost had been high. Kthar, the massive alien warrior who had once been an enemy, stood silently among the surviving human soldiers. His gaze swept over the destruction, the empty fields littered with the remains of battle, and the faces of the humans who had fought by his side. It had been a hard-fought war, and though they had emerged victorious, the price of that victory was heavy. Many of the soldiers who had fought beside him were no longer there. The sounds of the battlefield had long since faded, replaced by the mournful silence of loss. The alien warship had been destroyed, its power core detonated by Kithar's final act of selflessness. With that, the Tarnuk Empire was left in disarray, their once mighty fleet scattered and broken. Their invasion plans had been crushed, their hopes of conquering Earth dashed. But as the humans celebrated, there was no true joy in the air. There was relief, certainly, but also sorrow. The soldiers who had fought alongside Kithar and the others were gone. The survivors gathered together, standing solemnly in front of the wreckage. They mourned the loss of their friends, their comrades, the men and women who had stood with them in the face of impossible odds. Bonner, the brave soldier who had fallen earlier in the battle, was still fresh in Kithar's mind. His sacrifice, his unshakable belief in the human cause, had been a guiding light throughout the fight. And now, with the war over, that light had been extinguished. As the human commander stood before them, he spoke of the victory, of how they had defied all expectations and proven that no matter how small they were, they could stand up to the might of an empire. But even as he spoke, his eyes were filled with sorrow. He knew that this victory had come at a terrible cost. The Tarnuk Empire had been defeated, but the wounds of war would not heal so easily. Kthar stood at the edge of the group, his enormous figure casting a long shadow. He had come a long way since the day he first faced the humans. He had seen them as weak, insignificant creatures, small, fragile beings whose existence was little more than a joke to the mighty empire. But now, as he looked at the humans around him, he saw something entirely different. He saw strength, not in their size, but in their spirit. He saw resilience, a refusal to be broken, a will to fight even when all hope seemed lost. Kthar had learned much from his time with the humans. He had come to understand that size was irrelevant. It was not the strength of the body that mattered, but the strength of the heart. It was not the weapons or the technology, but the will to fight that determined who would win. The humans had shown him this over and over again, through their actions, their sacrifices, and their unbreakable determination. As the humans mourned their fallen comrades, Cthulhu reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had been an enemy, an invader, a force of destruction. But through the eyes of the humans, he had seen a different kind of power, one that was not born of cruelty or domination, but of love, unity, and the unwavering belief that no matter how small or powerless they seemed, they could make a difference. In the final moments of the battle, Cthulhu had come to realize that his own empire, his own people, had been blinded by arrogance. They had believed themselves to be the greatest, the most powerful, but in the end, it was the humans who had proven that it was not might that made someone strong, but courage and the willingness to stand up for what was right. Now, as Cthulhu stood with the humans, he knew that his future was uncertain. The Karnak Empire would likely seek revenge, and Cthulhu would be hunted as a traitor. But in that moment, he didn't care. He had made his choice. He had chosen to stand with the humans, to fight for their survival. The road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. For the first time in his life, Cthulhu felt that he had found a purpose that was greater than himself. As the commander turned to him, offering a nod of respect, Cthulhu's heart swelled with a strange feeling, a mixture of pride and gratitude. He had once seen humanity as weak and insignificant, but now he saw them as giants. They had risen from the ashes of war, stronger than ever, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In a final monologue, Cthulhu spoke, his voice steady and strong. When I first came to Earth, I saw only weakness. I saw small creatures, no match for the power of my empire. But today, I see something different. Today, I see strength. Strength not in the body, but in the heart. Strength not in the weapons, but in the will to fight. The humans have shown me what true power is. We were small, but we became giants today. Cthulhu paused, his gaze sweeping over the survivors. It is not the size of the body that matters. It is the size of the will to fight, and that is what makes the humans truly strong. With those words, Cthulhu turned and walked away, his heart filled with a sense of peace. He had found his place in this world, and though the future was uncertain, he knew that he would stand by the humans, no matter the cost. The victory was theirs, but the true victory was not just over the Karnak Empire. It was over their own doubts, their own fears. The humans had proven that no matter how small or insignificant they seemed, they could take on the universe and win. The battle was over, but a new beginning had just begun.